And let's see here. Do we have other folks join? Hey, Heidi, how's it going?
Hello, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you as well. Um, how is life?
Life, so good.
Nothing,
No
nothing
complaint.
crazy?
No complaint.
Nice. That's always good. Did you do anything interesting between last class and now?
Class? Today I attended music class. It's a Japanese song, so it's very rare case.
Japanese songs.
Yes.
Nice. You know, there's a band I know that's Japanese that is
Mm.
called Uttara Kuru.
Mm.
I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this band, but
What? Kaoru?
I
Like
typed
a
it in the
cow?
window. Uttara Kuru?
Kaoru?
Yeah.
Really Kaoru? Girl. Not girl already.
Really?
Woman.
Woman is which word is woman?
Japanese woman, right? Utada Kaoru.
Oh, I have no idea. I don't know the meaning. I have no idea what the meaning is, but I remember.
This is singer. Singer name.
Oh, it's a sing. Okay, okay. So because the music is very instrumental, very it uses a lot of different kind of melodies. When I was at Disney World when I was a kid at the Japan exhibition, they were they had the music this person's music or this band's music play.
Mm.
Some of the songs that were on it are I don't know Sugaru. I don't know how to pronounce it, but this is the name of one of the songs. Another one is let me try to remember. I have their album right here on my desktop. For example, another one is called Fudo-san, and then Kokoro.
Kokoro, yeah, I know.
Yeah, there's some just interesting songs that they're
Uh-huh.
very interesting melodies. Like I haven't heard of these kind of melodies before in other Japanese songs, so it's very cool to kind of hear that style of music.
Mm.
So yeah, but besides that, I think it was very fun. What kinds of Japanese music are popular these days? Like I would
Yeah.
say all kinds, right?
I can't say any title. I'm listening only that. I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. No problems. There's a, I think there's a strong Korean influence actually in the U.S. on music and
Yes, even here.
yeah, they seem to be doing very well in the soap operas as well. Just in terms of culture, a lot of girls listen to Korean bands, listen to a lot of watch a lot of Korean shows on TV, especially in the U.S. So maybe in
I'm one
Saudi
of them.
also. Oh, you're one of them as well.
Yes,
That's good. Yeah.
huge one.
Do you speak any Korean though?
Some words.
Nice, nice. That's really cool. I don't know any Korean. My sister speaks Korean. I don't speak any Korean. So we have an interesting family. Uh, okay, guys, so let's get started. Today we are going to be discussing the future tense. And when we talk about the future tense, we are talking about, um, when we are talking about things that will happen in the future, right? I think it's pretty simple. But we can use different constructions to make the future tense. The first construction is the will construction, right? So, and the will construction works as follows. So you have, for example, a sentence with will and then a subject plus a verb, and then you can add an optional time phrase if you want, right? So will you go to the supermarket tomorrow, right? Will you go to school in a few hours,
Mm.
right? So that's how we design the will construction, and this is how we would ask questions, right? So if you were to answer that question, yes, I will, right? So the subject comes first, I will, and then the verb, right? Go to the supermarket in a few hours, right? And then that optional time phrase at the end. So any questions on the will construction so far? I don't imagine this to be a big stickling point for you guys, but
No question. Thank
no
you.
questions. So you're good too?
Yep.
Okay. The second construction that we have when we talk about the future tense is the going to construction, right? So we can use going to for answering questions or also to make questions in the future. And the way that we make this construction, or the way that we construct this form of the future tense, is for the question we would say we would use a form of the verb to be, right? So am, is, are, whatever, then the subject, and then the verb, and then an optional phrase. So, right? So are you, for example, are is the verb to be, then the subject. So are you going to be, or are you going to, let's say, read your book tonight? You know, whatever the case might be, right? Are you going to do something tonight? So I should say, I'm going to change this construction. Am, is, are, plus the subject, plus going to, and then the verb. Right? I think it didn't have that part. So plus the verb, and then the optional time phrase if you want. Right? So are you going to eat dinner tonight? Right? Are you going to exercise at the gym tomorrow morning? Right? Whatever the case might be. Any questions about this construction?
No question.
No questions. So you're okay too?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So, and then the very last thing that I want to mention, and then after this we'll be able to jump into you guys giving me examples, you guys having a conversation, as well as us looking at the article. The third way that we can, this is a little bit less common, I would say, but it's something, it's another way that we can make the future, we can make questions that talk about the future. And that is if we use the present continuous, if we make the present continuous, right? So how do we make a present continuous question, or how do we incorporate the present continuous into a phrase? The construction is, once again, the verb to be, and then the subject, right? And then the verb, and then a verb that ends in ing, plus maybe an optional time phrase. This is how you ask a question in the present continuous, right? And the way when you ask a question in the present continuous, it can also refer to the future, right? It can also refer to a question about the future. So if we say, for example, are Heidi and So-So going to study English, right? Or I'm sorry, are Heidi and So-So studying English, right? Not going to in this case. We are using another verb that ends in ing, right? So are Heidi and So-So studying English? And then you can add the optional phrase if you want, right? You can say tomorrow or whatever, right? Are Heidi and So-So studying English tomorrow? Even though this does not use the will or the going to construction, because it's in the present continuous, it can be used to talk about, it can be used to ask a question about the future, right? When you answer, right, when you answer, you can also say, yes, Heidi and So-So are going to learn, or are learning English tomorrow, right, or something like that. If you don't say the, if you, in the response, if you don't indicate the time phrase, if you just say, yes, Heidi and So-So are learning English, then we don't really know if you're referring to the future or not, right? You can be talking about the present continuous even in that case. So for the question, there's an option for it to use the time phrase, right? The understanding is if you use the time phrase in the question, you would also want to use it in the answer. But just giving the simple answer without the time phrase, it doesn't make it clear whether or not we're talking about the future, right? So that's just a little bit, that's a little caveat to this construction. Any questions, guys?
No question.
Yeah.
Okay, everything makes sense?
Yep.
Okay, so how about this then? I want Heidi to ask, Heidi, if you could please ask So-So a question for the future tense in the will form, please.
Will form.
Yes, please.
Will you go to the shopping mall later?
And
Answer?
So yeah, if you could answer, please, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yes, I will.
Let's try to answer the complete sentence, though. So let's try to use the full sentence.
But it's correct to say yes or no.
Yeah, you could say just yes or no.
Like,
Yeah.
yes, I will go to the mall. Or yes, I will go shopping, right? You said?
Yeah. I think, yeah, yes, I'll go to the mall later, or whatever, right? Because I think Heidi's question was, will you go to the mall later? Yeah, yes, I'll go to the mall in a few hours or later, right? So, why don't you ask a question to Heidi now using the will construction?
With Heidi, will you study English after this class?
Yes, I will study English after this class.
Fantastic, fantastic, right? So, how about, let's switch it up a little bit. Let's say that we are using the going to construction, and this time, so, I want you to ask me a question with the going to construction.
Going to, okay. Are you going to teach a class after this one?
Yes, I'm going to teach a class after this one that will start immediately after this one. How about that? Right? I'm going to teach a class immediately after this class. Fantastic, right? That's good. It's a great question. Heidi, would you be able to ask So a question using the going to construction?
Okay. Are you going to take a taxi to go to mall?
No, I won't take a taxi to go to the mall.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, right? No, I won't take a taxi to go to the mall. I will not, or I won't take a taxi to go to the mall. You can say, how would you say that in the, how would you answer in the same form that Heidi asked you? So with the going to form.
Okay. No, I'm not going to take a taxi to the mall.
Absolutely, fantastic, right? So it comes before going to, not going to, right? And with the will construction, the not comes after will, right? Will not. So I think you guys understand that very well. Now let me ask you guys a question using the future, or using the present continuous, right? So this is going to be something not related to you guys particularly. I'm just going to mention people, right? Heidi, are Japanese people learning English more actively than before?
Yes, they are studying English more than before.
More than before, right? Fantastic. So this is something that really, I guess from the way I made it, it's not completely clear if it's the future or if I'm asking just about the present continuous, right? Let me do a better job. Heidi's answer was perfect, but let me do a better job in asking that question. Let's say, so Heidi, are your friends visiting the mall tomorrow?
No, I don't have any friend who goes who is going to the mall tomorrow.
I'll
Tomorrow?
go with you, Heidi.
So yeah. Okay. Are you and Heidi shopping at the mall tomorrow?
Yes, we are shopping at the mall tomorrow.
Fantastic, right? So using that optional time phrase really makes the difference between whether or not it's a future tense question or whether or not it's just a present continuous question. I think you guys got this very. I think you guys understood this lesson very well. Any questions about this information so far?
No questions.
No questions. Okay, fantastic. Let us then take a quick look at the lesson, or at the article for today. So I like this article because we will read about Afghanistan, or if you pronounce it correctly, Afghanistan, and it's a country where we see a lot of warfare, a lot of deception, a lot of shadow actors, right? I like to call people who live in the shadows, the black market, the underground world, the dark world, right? I like to call these people shadow actors, right? Because they live in the shadows. In a country like Afghanistan, where we have so many people who are affected by war and corruption and deception and every possible form of suffering, shadow actors are very important, right? And Afghanistan is a country that has a lot of terrorism, and we will be reading about one aspect of terrorism, or one aspect of their society that allows bad people to blend in with the common people, right? And so I'm going to be pasting the article link right here. It's there for you guys to open. Once you guys have that, let's get started. So let me know if you guys have any troubles opening up the link. Do you guys see the article?
Yes, I opened it.
Okay, fantastic. So, Taliban tactics, stealing the enemy's uniform. It has proved difficult to control the sale of these uniforms, right? You see these uniforms. We'll be talking more about them in our class today. At a Kabul market, Kabul is the capital of Afghanistan, right? At a Kabul market, a row of shiny new Afghan military uniforms are on sale. It could have been uniforms such as these that were used in a string of brazen attacks this year, including one near the presidential palace in June when militants dressed as soldiers penetrated the securest part of the city center. Such violence has intensified pressure on the authorities to clamp down on the trade in illicit uniforms. June's attack was a sign that they may be losing this battle. For years, insurgents have had access to and used the uniforms of Afghan army and police as well as Western forces to evade security checks or to get bombers close to their targets. In the June attack, they even had fake ID cards. This tactic appears to be on the increase as the Taliban focus their attacks on fellow Afghans serving in the security forces and high-profile targets in the capital. This is a countrywide problem. Earlier this year, militants in uniform also killed 12 policemen in the southern province of Uruzgan and attacked the governor's compound in Panjshir province. So here we see an example of these fake ID cards, Afghan militants' fake ID cards that were used in the June presidential palace attack, right? They look really official, right?
Mm.
And in the latest attack in September, 2 men dressed as Afghan policemen attacked a Shia mosque armed with AK-47 assault rifles, knives, and explosives. So the Shia are a second group of Muslims. They are another, in Arabic we say madhab, another school of thought, as in they have another ideology. They are Muslims, but they are a different sect. And these Afghan policemen attacked a mosque that belongs to this sect, right? Off the shelf. But in the Afghan capital, you don't have to look far to find a ready source for army outfits. The Pul-e-Khishti area, the busiest and noisiest part of the city, is home to Kabul's Old Bazaar, famous for its black market traders. I quickly found different types of military clothing, ranging from Afghan police uniforms to those of NATO forces. But when the traders saw my camera and reporting equipment, they stuffed their wares away hastily. In the blink of an eye, any trace of the black market trade had disappeared. In one specialist tailor shop for military clothing, an Afghan policeman told me that he bought his uniform from a trader in the area. He didn't ask for anything, no ID card, no military documents, nothing. He just asked for money, Abdul Rahman says while waiting for his trousers to be mended. Mr. Rahman says that on the black market, a military uniform costs about 500 Afghanis, which is about $10. A policeman's salary starts at about $200 a month. A piece of military insignia, such as the symbol of an Afghan police or army rank, sells for less than $1, right? So look at these badges, right? This badge says like Afghanistan, this one says something about maybe some military force.
Police are military, the soldiers selling this uniform.
Well, the military soldiers are going to these same tailors for the uniforms, right? And the tailors are not asking, can I see your ID? Can I see if you are really part of the military? No one is asking these questions, right? If I go to the same tailor and I pay him money, he will make me the same uniform with the same badge, any of these badges that he makes for the people that are actually in the military, right? So it's a big problem. There's no official method of figuring out who is who, right? That's what this article is trying to, I think that's the main idea of the article, right? So you can go to the tailor and the tailor will make you a military uniform. The tailor can even add any of this, like This is MP, this is military police, right? This is a high rank, right? Maybe this is someone who is not just a normal soldier. He can put these on your shirt, right? I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Nobody is checking to see if you are really who you say you are, right? Uniforms are usually issued by the Interior and Defense Ministries, but if stocks are low, they issue documentation allowing soldiers and police to have their clothes made at licensed tailors' workshops directly. There are about 50 tailors in Kabul's Old Bazaar who produce and mend uniforms. The head of the tailors' union, Mr. Hakim, told me that he had full control of the workshops, but that he did need to keep an eye on things. I don't let them do any illegal business, Mr. Hakim said. If I didn't control them, they would even prepare guns for sale. Right? So the authorities are trying to keep a lid on the trade by licensing specific tailors and sewing workshops to manufacture and carry out repairs for the Interior and Defense Ministries. Licensed workshops are supposed to accept orders only from the military or police. Right? Ibrahim, a tailor on the market who has such a license, says the system works to some extent, but that the black market is difficult to control. Licensed tailor shops usually ask for ID cards, a specific address, and military documents from their customers, he says. But on the black market, there is no law, right? A very powerful statement, right? On the black market, there is no law, right? And there are a number of sewing workshops where the controls are much more lax, much more relaxed, right? So this guy, Mohammed Zarif, who runs a small outlet, says he prefers not to request ID cards from people that are already in uniform. If we don't know the customers, then we ask for ID cards. But when we know them, and if they are already in military uniforms, then we can't ask, he says. When pressed on how he can tell whether a man in uniform is really a member of the military, he told me he didn't think it was any of his business to inquire into that. The government should prevent it. If the government can't prevent it, how can we? Right? So I guess this last part, I'll just quickly read this part as well. The authorities say that they are doing their best to prevent illegal sales, but it is a difficult problem to tackle. Apart from illegal production and sales, there are reports that security force personnel and deserters, right? Deserters are people who leave the military, add to the problem by selling their uniforms on the markets, right? So people who leave the military, they have uniforms from the military, they can sell them to different people, right? We increased our intelligence and detection activities after the use of military uniforms increased among insurgents. Siddiq Siddiqui, a spokesman for the Afghan Interior Ministry, told the BBC. But we have had problems so far and will try our best to undermine their access to uniforms. Police and traders say that it is over 2 years since the last systematic raid on the Kabul black market took place and hundreds of uniforms were confiscated. The Interior Ministry says it conducts regular checkups, but with no police on show during the 2 hours I spent at the market, chances are that some traders will continue to view the illegal trade as a risk worth taking. Right. So we had some time, guys, and it's just you, so we have some time, so I decided to take a longer look at this article. What do you think about this, so what's your initial reaction to this?
I think that make it easier for terrorists to make their own moves. Because if they can disguise as a military, they can get in any place.
Yeah, right? But I mean, the system, do you think it's a broken system?
Yeah. They shouldn't, for example, even if they put a system for the teller to not design or do anything until they see their idea, but there are some old soldiers who live, let's say retired soldier, they still sell their uniforms after they finish their duty.
Exactly, right? So, I mean, is there a way to control this then? I mean, I guess the big question, you know, we took a look at the entire article. I mean, do you think the security situation in Afghanistan will ever improve? I mean, if there are people that can just go into tailors' shops and buy uniforms whenever they want, I mean, you know, will this constant threat of, you know, people disguising themselves as police, but they're actually terrorists. They go and they blow up a mosque, or they blow up somebody or something, right? Will that problem ever be solved?
If they put a system, a strict system, it will stop.
And do you think they will? Do you think it's possible for them to adopt a strict system?
They should. Or otherwise, the problem won't be solved.
Yeah. What would you do if you were running the Afghan Interior Ministry?
I will do two things. The first thing, that anyone who will go to the teller should have an ID.
Mm-hmm. What if they make fake
ID.
IDs? What if they make fake IDs, just like we saw?
Let's see. Maybe the military should do like a list of their own employers, and they send these lists to wherever.
To the
their own
tailors.
tailors. Yes, maybe. Or they should contract with some tailors.
Mm-hmm. So I think, yeah, go ahead. And then what's the second
And the other
part?
thing is for the retired military men. They should, after they finish their duty, they should submit their old uniforms.
They submit their uniforms, okay. So let's say, and I'm going to play devil's advocate, I have a half an hour with you, and I'm just going to make you crazy. So let's say the first thing that happens is you have the system. The system allows, so the military submits a list of people of their soldiers to the tailors, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say somewhere in the middle that list is intercepted, right? I mean, Afghanistan is not an advanced country. They don't use computers for this information. It's probably on paper, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody intercepts that document, some terrorist intercepts that document, and they add the names of other people, fake people, right? They just make up fake identities, and they add those to the list, and then the terrorist goes in later and says, "I'm Abu Hamid. This is my name is on the list, and I'm also a soldier."
Okay,
how can you stop that?
How about if there is a department in the military that they take the measure of their own soldiers and they go to the tailor and to do their own uniform? They shouldn't go to the tailor by themselves to pick up their own uniform.
So then the military should control not only the access to the tailor, but also receiving the uniforms from the tailors themselves.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's a good program. If I was running the Afghan Interior Ministry, which I am, I'm just messing, I'm not. I'm just messing. Then I would say that that's a good idea, right? I would say that's something that we could test, right? That's something that we could pilot as a program and say, okay, let's see if this allows us to make some kind of progress in this regard, right? Now, I think the bigger problem, right, and maybe you might have an idea about this, I do because I'm from that part of the world, right? I think the bigger problem is it doesn't seem to me that any of these solutions will actually work unless there is an actual honest and uncorrupt system in place, right? Because I think whenever you have room for corruption or room for error, we're talking about error here. It doesn't seem like the military or the people, or I shouldn't say the people, I should say it doesn't seem to me like the military has a real interest in making this a priority, right? I mean, how hard is it for a military of a country, right, to implement a basic uniform registration policy, right? I mean, Afghanistan, it's been, 10 years since they've been invaded now? And they have their government system. Hamid Karzai has been the president since their independence, right? What is that clown doing? I don't know what this guy is doing. I mean, people say he's just a puppet, right? He's, I don't know what this guy is doing, right? The Interior Ministry, the Defense Ministry, where is the communication between these groups, right? If you can't control uniforms, how can you control guns? How can you control anything in your country if you can't even control clothes, right? What do you think about that? That's just me talking.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like you said, it's been 10 years and nothing has changed.
Yeah, and I mean, what makes it
maybe, let's say, if some people in the military, they have their own agenda. Who knows?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think in a country like Afghanistan, in countries like Pakistan as well, right, you have elements within these groups, within the military establishment, within the within the Interior Ministry, maybe. I mean, who knows? People who have power are not necessarily focusing their energies on preserving the country, right? Or preserving the country's, or working for the people, right? Their agendas are different. Their agendas are varied. They may have their own interests, their own agendas, just like you said, right? So I think, I mean, in this article we read that they said that when supplies run low, right, that the government contracts out to these third-party tailors, right? And I don't understand how that makes sense because, I mean, you can't have a broken system like this, you know? It doesn't work this way. I mean, I don't know what I'm trying to say if that isn't new, but maybe they can, like, why can't they just control everything from within the army, right? I mean, the army can make their own stuff, and they can make their own uniforms, and they can just work out in that sense. But it's just not working that way. And I think she left. I think my last student left, unfortunately. I think she got disconnected. Let's take a look and see if she comes back. But for the guys who are here, the viewers who are watching, right, it doesn't make sense to me that the excuse would be that the lack of money is compelling the Afghan military to release the control of these uniforms to the third-party tailors, right? Just doesn't make sense. I think if you're the military of a country, you should be able to control both the source and both the source and the destination, right? You should be able to say, this is what's happening. We control our factories. We control the supply, and we control the demand, right? We have access to the supply, and we have access to the demand as well. So we know how many soldiers need uniforms. We will take the process from A to Z. We will make the clothes. We will make the buttons. We will process the clothes, and we will make this happen, right? No third party, nothing, all internal, all controlled, and no ability to allow any other groups to come in, right? I think that will greatly minimize the amount of these incidents that we see where these uniforms are getting stolen and being used for, illicit purposes, for crime or for terrorism or for many other actions, right? And the other question I had for the group was, why is accountability so crucial in the military and defense industries, right? So when we talk about accountability, we are talking about being responsible for your own actions, right? Having that level of understanding that you are going to be held accountable, or you are held responsible, or you are held to account for the actions that you commit, right? And I think if there was more stringent regulation in the interior and defense ministries of this country, that this wouldn't happen, right? So the lack of accountability has compelled not only the transition of power to these third parties, but in essence, that has also empowered these terrorists to take matters into their own hands, right? So without this discipline, without this accountability, without this system that is in place, right, which is so crucial, without those elements, the military and defense industry cannot be sustainable, right? Just doesn't allow room for any kind of not having those in place opens up all the possibilities to illegal activity. Having those in place greatly minimizes those avenues to illegal activity. That's just my personal opinion, right? And let's see. Let's take a look at the couple other articles that we had here. A couple other questions I had was, will it help if there is increased funding for these uniforms to be made in a central location? And I think that kind of is similar to what I was saying earlier. If the government controls, if the Interior or Defense Ministry controls the entire process from A to Z, they have a central factory, a central location where all these uniforms are being made, right? They're controlling the access to them, the supply and the demand. I think it would really help because you would minimize all these third parties, you would minimize all these issues, right? Fantastic. And I think so. This is the last question. This last question was a little bit more open-ended and meant for the students, right? If you work with the police, how could you know if someone was fake, right? If someone comes to you and says, I am Mr. So-and-so, how could you tell that this person was Mr. So-and-so? I think it's really cool to use human intelligence, personally. I think you look to see what the person's reaction is to certain things, right? Are they nervous? Do they seem like they don't know what they're talking about? Ask them some questions. Try to understand where they're coming from, right? You might be able to say to them, hey, okay, you are so and so. What division do you work in, or what's your background, right? What are you dealing with in this investigation, or just even small talk, right? Identify gaps in knowledge. Identify things that will prove to you, or that will make it clear to you that this person is fake, right? Interrogating somebody not in a room with, in a dark room with one light bulb. I'm saying interrogate somebody creatively, right? Go to them and ask them questions that will make them, if they know their stuff, those questions will not be difficult to answer. If they don't know what they're talking about, then that's a sign to you that maybe they are lying about their identity, right? That's one way I think we can get some answers, right? So training these folks better, right? Training the police and the military to be aware of those kinds of things. If you can stop that at a checkpoint, then you don't have the issue. You don't run the risk of having this be something that reaches the presidential palace and causes major problems, right? So I think those are some ideas that we can think about. So unfortunately, doesn't seem like anyone's in class right now. That really was the end of class. I think the one thing that I do want to mention is, in terms of pronunciation, since we do have some time, whenever we ask questions in English, sometimes we omit the sound of the letter H, right? So if I'm supposed to say, is he going to work tomorrow? Is he going to work tomorrow? Quickly in colloquial English, we might skip that ha sound. We might say, is he going to work tomorrow? Is he going to work tomorrow? Not is he going to work tomorrow. Is he going to work tomorrow, right? Another example of this is, for example, are you going to invite her, right? Are you going to invite her becomes, are you going to invite her, right? Invite her. And it's just, we don't pronounce that H in common colloquial English quickly, when we speak quickly. Is he going to work tomorrow? Are you going to invite her, right? And so that silent H, right? Anyway, folks, let me know if you guys have any questions. You guys have my information here. I'm sure you've been following along in the chat window as well as the discussion for today. But otherwise, since folks have... hey, so you're back.
Sorry, I had an internet problem.
Oh, that's fine. I was talking to myself when you were gone. I was just going to ask you, so what did we leave off on? Because I was talking to myself about the rest of the class, but what was the last thing we talked about?
We talked about the government, they couldn't control the military.
Yeah, right.
Like
so, yeah, right. So the question I had for you actually after that, and I like the idea that we were sharing. The question that I had for you was, do you think it would make sense? Or okay, before I even get to that, why is accountability so important in the military and defense industry?
Can you say the question again?
Yeah, why is accountability, right? Accountability, to be held accountable for something, to be held responsible for something, right? So let's say you are driving and you cross the red light, right? If the police catches you, you will be held accountable for that, right? You will have to maybe pay a fine. There will be some consequences because of your action, right? So why is it so crucial for the military and defense industry, for Afghanistan, for any other country, why is it so crucial, so important that they are held accountable?
I think because their main goal, or say their main responsibility, is to protect the nation. So they have a lot of responsibility.
100%, right? 100%. their responsibility is to protect the nation, to protect the citizens, and as a result, if they are falling short of that responsibility, what happens?
The country will be in danger, huge danger.
Yeah, the country can be in danger from anybody, right? And I think in Afghanistan, the problem is more domestic than international, right? The country is not really looking at foreign threats, the country is looking at domestic threats, right? People within the country that can blend in and have different agendas and so many different things, right? So something needs to be loyal, something needs to still be loyal to the country. And so then the next question of this, I think, is, this is what I was describing a little earlier, was, do you think it will help if there is more money for these uniforms, right? So that they are made, so that the army controls the entire process from A to Z to create these uniforms. Let's say that in all of Afghanistan, there is only one official factory for the creation of army uniforms. The army controls the supply, the army controls the demand, right? The army knows exactly how many uniforms they need. Their specific tailors have access to these tools, right? Their specific tailors make the uniforms, and nobody else has any idea, right? Maybe the badges, the numbers, the uniforms, everything has a number, right? Everything has an ID, so that only the ones that are officially released and made by that factory are the correct uniforms. Do you think that would help? Is that a solution?
Yeah, I think that will be the only solution.
Right? But do you think that's possible without increased funding? I think they need money to do something like that, right?
They need money and honest people.
So
people who will dedicate themselves to protecting their country and their own people.
So do you think they can ask for, the government can ask for their own people and be able to raise that money? I'm asking what's the source of the money? Would it be like zakat?
Exactly.
Would it be like charity money? I mean, what would be the source? The military is very proud, right? They might not want to ask the people for zakat. Things like that, right? But
maybe they should, let's say, cut the budget. They cut some things. They rearrange the whole budget for the military. Maybe that will help.
Yeah, it's a big change, though, right? Whatever we're asking for, it's a big change, right? Currently, the system right now that they have is so broken that they would have to really start again from scratch and say, okay, these are the problems. This is what we need, right? It's not easy to do that. I think it's very difficult, but it's just an idea, right? And
well, it's not difficult. It will take time. Of course, it will take time. But it will happen.
It will happen, right? I think every other country has a system, right? I mean, honestly, if you think about it, even in Saudi Arabia, if I want to become like a police officer, right, I'm going to need to go through the system. There's an organized system. I won't be able to get uniforms.
And I know a lot about that because my dad is in the military and my husband also in the military.
Yeah, so it's something that I think.
So it's a long process.
Exactly, right? I can't just go up and say, yeah, I want to be a
yes, exactly.
askeri, whatever, a military person, right? You have to be trained for that. You have to go through the process, right? They can maybe ask for foreign help in this. I honestly think the other countries would be open to helping them figure something out, right? It seems like such a simple solution, right? Just have one factory, one system, ID cards, ID numbers, right? For every shirt has a number, I don't know. I'm just thinking right now of different ideas, but okay, so this is a question for you that I think will be interesting, right? You say your husband is in the military, your father's in the military, so you might have some idea. Let's say you are working in the military or you're working in the police, right? And somebody comes to you and says whatever, right, that they are a member of the military as well. How would you identify, or how could you try to understand whether or not this person is saying the truth or not?
Maybe if I was a tailor, for example, Yes. Maybe I should contact their department.
So no, I'm saying if you're a cop, right? If you're let's say if you're
Mm-hmm.
if you're like a policewoman, right? How
Yeah.
could you identify, like, just by looking at somebody, right? Like, by looking at their, I guess, is it possible to do that? What I was thinking, I'll share you my idea, and then afterwards you can tell me if I'm completely wrong, which I could be, right? I think, for example, if somebody comes to me and they're telling me, oh, they're a military person, or they're coming to me and saying, I need some uniforms, whatever, right? I want to mess with the guy a little bit, right? I want to ask him some questions to see if he can answer them easily, or to see if he gets nervous about these kinds of things, right? Because in my mind, the terrorists and the people that are meant to do bad, they do not have any idea about they do not they are inherently nervous about what they're doing, right? They don't have all the answers. So if you ask a real soldier, like, okay, who's your commanding officer, what's your division, where's your assignment, right? They'll be able to answer all those things. Where are you stationed?
But maybe he could be a smart one. Maybe he did his own homework.
Maybe, oh yeah, maybe he does his homework and maybe he answers all those questions. But do you think maybe his response, his body language will reflect all of that? Right? Body language is very important, right? Maybe the guy's nervous, like, يعني, I am in the Riyadh base, whatever, and he's just making things up, right? Maybe there is no Riyadh base or Kabul base or whatever, right? He's just making things up. So
yeah, exactly.
body language and things like that are really indicative. And then, some people, I don't know, it depends person to person, right? You can be intimidated, right? Somebody comes to you and says, make me this uniform. You're not going to maybe, like, even some of the shopkeepers in the article said, I don't ask them questions if they are already wearing a uniform, right? So
Yeah.
it's something that's difficult. Honestly, it's difficult. I don't expect the shopkeepers to be doing this kind of investigative police work, right? But I think the military can do a very good job. If there are military soldiers or whatever on the streets that are trying to identify possible terrorists, they can use this psychological, manipulation, or, body language, strategic interrogation, right? Let's just call it that. You're not taking someone to a room and saying, what is your name? What is your father's name? What do you do? I mean, stupid. That's dumb, right? That's not going to work. But you just observe them in their natural, how they're acting. If they're acting nervous, if they're acting, weird, if they don't know the answers to questions, those are red flags for me. I mean, at that point, I would call the real army or whatever, and I would say, this guy is a little bit suspicious. Why don't you guys maybe talk to him? You know what I mean? I mean, what's your idea? Is that a strategy? I mean, I feel bad for the people in this country because they don't know. I mean, they are helpless, right? And it seems like the government isn't doing anything to help them.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. Any person can tell. Like in Arabic, حبل الكذب قصير. The rope of lies is short. You can tell.
What is short?
The rope of lies is short.
The rope of the flies?
Lies.
So, the rope of lies is short. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. As in, they will run out of lies quickly, right?
Yeah.
Like you can only lie for so long, right?
Yes.
Before somebody catches up with you. Okay. That's a very interesting way of thinking about it, right? But yeah, like, I personally really like the Israeli model of interrogation. Okay, I've done some investigation into this, and, like, for example, if they want to know information about somebody, they're not going to beat them up. They're not going to do, like, the hands-on physical stuff. They can use extremely calculated and strategic strategies to come up with, okay, this person looks very suspicious. We should look out for this person, right? Just by body language. They train their police, they train their military to understand body language, to understand the idea behind how to read people, how to read people. If somebody seems like they're acting weird, that gives us a reason to just ask them some questions. Hey, what's going on? Where are you going? Where are you from? Tell me a little bit about yourself, right? I had a friend who was approached like this. You know, he was traveling in Israel, and he was asked some of these questions, and he obviously wasn't doing anything wrong, but I mean, it was an experience for him, right? We have to be strategic, I think, when you're working in the military, when you're working in the defense industry or the defense services, you have to be smart about how you do things, right? And I think this understanding and this training is maybe lacking in Afghanistan. I don't know. What do you think?
Yes, I think it could be an easier step than building a whole factory. It won't cost them a lot of money.
Yeah, just retrain some of these people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, give the people some tools, give the soldiers and the police some tools that they can actually use, right? I mean, reverse psychology, you know, strategic interrogation. I mean, I'm not saying you go and you beat people up. No, you just, if the person is innocent, then they're going to just say what they need to say, you know? They're not going to be, you know, the rope of their truth is long, yani, you know? It's not the rope of their lies anymore. So,
Yeah.
anyway. All right. Sorry, so I was dragging on for a while. Did you have any questions about this lesson or about this article?
No, I'm good.
Makes sense? Okay. I have another class starting right now. If you want to join, feel free. Otherwise, have a great rest of the day.
Okay.
Alrighty. Have a good one. Bye-bye. And let's see here. Do we have other folks join? Hey, Heidi, how's it going?
Hello, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you as well. How is life?
Life, so good.
Nothing crazy?
No complaint.
Nice. That's always good. Did you do anything interesting between last class and now?
Class? Today I attended the music class. It's a Japanese song, so it's very rare case.
Japanese songs.
Yes.
Nice. You know, there's a band I know that's Japanese that is called Uttara Kuru. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this band, but
Kaoru?
I typed it in the window. Uttara Kuru.
Kaoru?
Yeah.
Maybe Kaoru. Girl. Not girl already. Yeah.
Really?
Woman.
Woman is which word is woman?
Japanese woman, right? Utada Kaoru.
Oh, I have no idea. I don't know the meaning. I have no idea what the meaning is, but I remember.
This is singer. Singer name.
Oh, it's a sing. Okay. So because the music is very instrumental, very it uses a lot of different kind of melodies. When I was at Disney World, when I was a kid at the Japan exhibition, they had the music, this person's music or this band's music play. Some of the songs that were on it are, I don't know, Sugaru. I don't know how to pronounce it, but this is the name of one of the songs. Another one is, let me try to remember. I have their album right here on my desktop. For example, another one is called Fudo-san, and then Kokoro.
Kokoro, yeah, I know.
Yeah, there's some just interesting songs that they're very interesting melodies. Like I haven't heard of these kind of melodies before in other Japanese songs, so it's very cool to kind of hear that style of music. So yeah, but besides that, I think it was very fun. What kinds of Japanese music are popular these days? Like I would say all kinds, right?
I can't say any title. I'm listening only that. I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. No problems. I think there's a strong Korean influence actually in the U.S. on music and
Yes, even here.
yeah, they seem to be doing very well in the soap operas as well. Just in terms of culture, a lot of girls listen to Korean bands, watch a lot of Korean shows on TV, especially in the U.S. So maybe in
I'm one of
Saudi
them.
also. Oh, you're one of them as well.
Yes,
That's good. Yeah.
huge one.
Do you speak any Korean though?
Some words.
Nice, nice. That's really cool. I don't know any Korean. My sister speaks Korean. I don't speak any Korean. So we have an interesting family. Uh, okay, guys, so let's get started. Today we are going to be discussing the future tense. And when we talk about the future tense, we are talking about, um, when we are talking about things that will happen in the future, right? I think it's pretty simple. But we can use different constructions to make the future tense. The first construction is the will construction, right? So, and the will construction works as follows. So you have, for example, a sentence with will and then a subject plus a verb, and then you can add an optional time phrase if you want, right? So will you go to the supermarket tomorrow, right? Will you go to school in a few hours, right? So that's how we design the will construction, and this is how we would ask questions, right? So if you were to answer that question, yes, I will, right? So the subject comes first, I will, and then the verb, right? Go to the supermarket in a few hours, right? And then that optional time phrase at the end. So any questions on the will construction so far? I don't imagine this to be a big stickling point for you guys, but
No question. Thank
no
you.
questions. So you're good too?
Yep.
Okay. The second construction that we have when we talk about the future tense is the going to construction, right? So we can use going to for answering questions or also to make questions in the future. And the way that we make this construction, or the way that we construct this form of the future tense, is for the question we would say we would use a form of the verb to be, right? So am, is, are, whatever, then the subject, and then the verb, and then an optional phrase, right? So are you, for example, are is the verb to be, then the subject. So are you isn't continuous. It can also refer to the future, right? It can also refer to a question about the future. So if we say, for example, are Heidi and So-So going to study English, right? Or I'm sorry, are Heidi and So-So studying English, right? Not going to in this case. We are using another verb that ends in ing, right? So are Heidi and So-So studying English? And then you can add the optional phrase if you want, right? You can say tomorrow or whatever, right? Are Heidi and So-So studying English tomorrow? Even though this does not use the will or the going to construction, because it's in the present continuous, it can be used to talk about, it can be used to ask a question about the future, right? When you answer, right, when you answer, you can also say, yes, Heidi and So-So are going to learn or are learning English tomorrow, right, or something like that. If you don't say if you in the response, if you don't indicate the time phrase, if you just say, yes, Heidi and So-So are learning English, then we don't really know if you're referring to the future or not, right? You can be talking about the present continuous even in that case. So for the question, there's an option for it to use the time phrase, right? The understanding is if you use the time phrase in the question, you want to use it in the answer. But
Yeah.
just giving the simple answer without the time phrase, it doesn't make it clear whether or not we're talking about the future, right? So that's just that's a little caveat to this construction. Any questions, guys?
No question.
Yeah.
Okay, everything makes sense?
Yep.
Okay, so going to be, or are you going to, let's say, read your book tonight? You know, whatever the case might be, right? Are you going to do something tonight? So I should say, I'm going to change this construction. Am, is, are, plus the subject, plus going to, and then the verb. Right? I think it didn't have that part. So plus the verb, and then the optional time phrase if you want. Right? So are you going to eat dinner tonight? Right? Are you going to exercise at the gym tomorrow morning? Right? Whatever the case might be. Any questions about this construction?
No question.
No questions. So you're okay too?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So, and then the very last thing that I want to mention, and then after this we'll be able to jump into you guys giving me examples, you guys having a conversation, as well as us looking at the article. The third way that we can, this is a little bit less common, I would say, but it's another way that we can make the future, we can make questions that talk about the future. And that is if we use the present continuous, if we make the present continuous, right? So how do we make a present continuous question, or how do we incorporate the present continuous into a phrase? The construction is, once again, the verb to be, and then the subject, right? And then the verb, and then a verb that ends in ing, plus maybe an optional time phrase. This is how you ask a question in the present continuous, right? And the way when you ask a question in the